Aloha, I'm Malia Zimmerman, and this is News Behind the News. Today, I have two interesting guests who are going to talk to us about the Honolulu Rail Project and why they oppose it. One of them is Senator Sam Slom, welcome to the show, and
Hello.
Panos Prevedouros, University of Hawaii professor.
Hi, Malia.
Okay, tell me about this. First of all, there's this lawsuit that you're one of the people helping in terms of
I'm one of the plaintiffs. Yeah,
right.
one of the plaintiffs.
So tell me about this. First of all, Panos, why don't you give a 30-second overview of the project, and then Sam, why are you worried about this
Fair
project?
enough.
Yeah. So the project has moved to a new phase now as of January, which is it got a record on decision, which is the lawsuit tries to revert. The mayor had a ceremonial groundbreaking, not the groundbreaking ceremony because it didn't really start, but he received authority to do what is called pre-construction. Clear the fields, remove trees, all 900 of them if you wanted to. So that's the stage. The city now has just revised what is called the financial statement, which also counts as your application to get into final design. So they keep telling us that we're constructing the rail and we are not even doing final design yet. So plenty time still for any serious construction, and we're moving on to the lawsuit, which if it's successful, then it may be game over.
$5.3 billion is what they say the rail is going to cost now. It's gone from, I think it was $3 billion to $4.6 billion to now
Right.
it's $5.3 billion. Actually, it was 5.5. Now they've gone down to about 5.3
Oh yeah,
billion.
Mayor Carlisle says we're saving money on it.
So we're saving a little money on
Yeah.
it. But what is this? I mean, what are your concerns? Why are you challenging this project?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons. I think people have been concerned, as they've indicated over the years, and they felt that they've been shut out of the entire process, that it was kind of a done deal from the very beginning. Some people took their time. They went to some of these town meetings and found out they weren't town meetings. It was just a, rah-rah session for the mayor and the administration. This goes back to Mayor Hanneman's administration too, so it's nothing new, except that they use our money to try to propagandize us. Now, you remember we had to fight for a long time to get the question on the ballot. They resisted that, and then finally when the question went on the ballot, it wasn't the way we wanted the question, and it wasn't really full disclosure. And even with all that, the vote was like 53% in favor of it, not what you would call a landslide or a mandate. So people have felt frustrated because they've watched things go on, and they watched the groundbreaking that Panos was talking about, so-called. And they felt, isn't there any way that we can stop this? And you in Hawaii Reporter, your Jim Dooley story showed that even the EIS that they had done had nearly doubled in the cost. So when you talk about a $5.3 billion rail, first of all, you're talking about construction cost only. I've been using the figure of $6 to $8 billion, and I feel comfortable with that, plus operating, plus maintenance. So we're talking about the largest public project in Hawaii's history at a time when we can't afford it. We can't afford to take care of our schools. We can't afford to take care of our medical personnel. We certainly haven't taken care of our roads or our infrastructure. And we got sewer breaks, we got water main breaks, we got road problems and all that. So here we are. So what do you do? The last resort is a lawsuit. And there's both good and bad about that. Cliff Slater of HonoluluTraffic.com, who is the guru in all of this, he got the top environmental lawyer in the nation, Nicholas Yost. Top in cost, too. He's very expensive. Panos and I were thinking about going into another profession. But he's the guy that wrote the the NEPA environmental law. And if he tells us that we have a good lawsuit and a good case, then it must be. The interesting thing is the cast of characters.
Now, tell me about the plaintiffs.
Well, you've never seen a cast like this. Okay. You've got Cliff Slater. All right, that's fine.
A libertarian.
A libertarian. Then you've got Dr. Mike Oichi, who has been a long-time critic, but he's a doctor. Right.
Nonpartisan.
Nonpartisan.
Not part of a party.
Okay. Then you have Donna Wong of Hawaii's Thousand Friends, a very well-known environmental organization, but also one that has tended to be Democrat or Democratic in the past. Then you've got my newest closest buddy, the former Democrat governor of the state of Hawaii, Ben Cayetano. And Ben and I are on the same side in this. Interesting thing, though, as you know, Ben has been entirely consistent, even from the time he was governor. He was against the rail, and he was very forthright about this. Then you've got Judge Walter Heen, who is the tracer of lost rail funds, Walter Heen, who was the head of the Democrat Party, one of the co-authors of Broken Trust. And then you have Randy Roth, who was also a co-author of Broken Trust and a professor at the University of Hawaii, and myself. So it's an interesting group. One reporter, you were at the press conference, and one reporter looked over at us and said, well, how do you answer the charge that more than half of the plaintiffs are Republicans? And everybody gasped. What? Can't he do any addition? It's a very ecumenical group.
It's very diverse.
It's a very diverse group. And the interesting thing is, we come at the lawsuit. I'm representing the Small Business Hawaii Entrepreneurial Education Foundation. And some people say, what's an entrepreneurial foundation getting involved in a lawsuit? Well, one of the things is to protect entrepreneurs and businesses. And this project will be absolutely detrimental. Panos talked about the 900 trees, and even if you weren't an environmentalist, you will be, for looking at that tragedy. But then businesses, they face eminent domain and destruction and removal and all that. So we come at it from that standpoint. But all of the different plaintiffs have different issues, and they have different perspectives of what they would like to see done. But all of us agree that what the city administration has done has been beyond the law. They didn't do what they were required to do, having a serious analysis of alternatives, number one, addressing environmental issues, number two. So that's where we are.
Okay, now one of the key parts of the lawsuit, maybe you can address this, Panos, even though you're not a plaintiff, but you're an expert in terms of witnesses. What do you think, in terms of the EIS, which is the Environmental Impact Statement, that was the key issue, was it done fairly? Was it done properly? Did it allow other alternatives in there? So can you explain that a little bit?
This is actually the major sticking point that we have. After 6 years of looking into it, we have a final environmental impact statement. And in a city of less than 1 million people, it traps us. It has set up a trap between two choices: do nothing and a $6 billion elevated rail. You ask questions about hot lanes, not there. You ask questions about light rail, not there. You ask questions about a Pearl Harbor tunnel or bridge, not there. Nothing is there. Within 12 to 16 months, early in 2005, 2006, there was a very quick document, about 110 pages, alternatives analysis, and most viable alternatives that were put in a few paragraphs and summarily executed for, one-line excuse. Navy objects, or this and that. Excuse me, if you work with the Navy, things may happen. There are a lot of underground tunnels at or near Navy and other military bases. It's a non-absolute no-no. You can find solutions. So that is a major environmental concern. This is exactly what the NEPA process is not supposed to do: trap a community between a hyper-expensive project and do nothing. So that is exactly why, well, if they want to call us the naysayers and the no people, you have to go to that position and request a supplementary EIS so you can see the numbers on the rest of them. Bishop Estate procured a study that with a hybrid, elevated, and light rail. So at least one rail expert of international renown has put forth that a half-price system can do it. Then you have the folks that they advocate that the old Oahu ORL, which actually a lot of the right-of-way is preserved between Nanakuli and the airport. It exists. In theory, we could have a light rail system for about $1 billion going back and forth almost to Waianae to the airport. We have absolutely no way of knowing exactly what's going to cost, how it's going to serve, or anything. So that's spectacular failure for an EIS document. So the lawsuit essentially is not anti-rail. You guys didn't do your homework. You just did, what you wanted to do, but you didn't do the homework that the law requires you to do. In fact, the law says that you're supposed to study and non-transit alternatives. You want to build a freeway? Good for you. Analyze the options, but look at rail systems too. You're doing rail system? Good. Look at rail systems, but also analyze hot lanes and freeway options. Freeways, these guys didn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. So the process has been very deficient from the get-go.
So one of the things that, is that the mayor calling for you?
Yeah, it must be. Must be.
So one of the things that was, interesting about the lawsuit was you were challenging the cultural aspects and also the whole, like in terms of the Hawaiian bones and the Eevee, where is it going to be buried and so on, right? And then you have, is it going to be buried in the line? And then you also have the cultural aspects in terms of architecture. You have Chinatown, downtown, the historic districts. Is the rail going to go right through that? You also had the federal judges, which is a whole nother thing, saying don't put this by our federal by our federal court because it's going to go within 45 feet of our train, or the train's going to go within 45 feet of our building, and if somebody bombs it, he could attack us.
That's a major
and so
threat.
it's just been a lot of twists in this whole thing. In fact, even a whole nother story is the fact that all these judges in Hawaii recuse themselves from the case, from your case. So you're going to have a judge from the Ninth Circuit.
Panos brings up a good point, though, and something that we need to emphasize. The lawsuit is not anti-rail per se. It's saying that you haven't done the work that you were supposed to. And he brought up, different examples, and you did too. It's not that this has just come right now. This has been going on for years.
Exactly.
And people have, they've raised these issues, but the arrogance of the city administrations, the two of them, have said, we don't care, we're going on from that. So you had alternatives. You had a requirement to look at those alternatives seriously, and we haven't done that. So now we're down to the lawsuit where we have to do it.
Well, Governor Cayetano was invited to come on the show, and I hope that he will in the future talk about this because he's very good on this issue, explaining what the problems are.
Right.
But one of the issues he's brought up at the press conferences over and over is the fact that PB America did the survey for Mayor Harris, and they said that BRT, Bus Rapid Transit, was the best alternative for Oahu.
Yeah.
Then they did the same assessment for Mayor Hanneman, who wanted the rail. And of course, Mayor Harris wanted the BRT. Mayor Hanneman wanted the rail. And he points out they did the same assessment for Mayor Hanneman just a couple of years later, and that they suddenly picked rail as the best alternative for Oahu. So he doesn't exactly say they're selling out, but that's what it sounds like.
Parsons Brinkerhoff. I mean, it's a fine company. They've done fine work and all that. But it's just like kind of lawyers. Whoever hires you, you're going to come out with that kind of recommendation because otherwise the people that hire you, they don't want that. And I think that's part of the problem. We didn't have objectivity. We had the issues raised, and they were squashed from the beginning.
Right. They do say that they're, customer focused. So if the customer is Hanneman,
is that another translation for suck-ups?
Yeah, well. But also there are serious doubts about their work, particularly when it comes to very particular places such as islands. They have had a spectacular failure on the island of Puerto Rico, where there is a city of San Juan, right? So San Juan decided to do heavy rail. So what I love about comparing Puerto Rico with Oahu is that we have almost identical case, island and island, heavy rail and heavy rail, FTA oversight, FTA oversight, Parsons Brinkerhoff. Okay, so what happened there? Unfortunately, they built it. Fortunately for us, now we know how these things work. So PB estimates a cost of $1.25 billion. FTA approves that. They build it. $2.25 billion and 100% cost overrun. PB estimates 80,000 riders in the opening year. FTA approves that. They open and they get 25,000. 6 years after the operation of the system, they are at 38,000 riders, where they haven't even reached the 50% point of the forecast. Why are we hiring people to do this kind of work? And then the city goes out and the mayor and he says, no, my figures are absolutely correct. And a few months ago, at the ending months of Governor Lingle's governorship, she procured a financial analysis of the report by one of the most reputable firms in Washington, D.C. Those folks, they are not pro-infrastructure or against. You give them a project, rail system, a highway or a big dam, and you tell them, well, this is the preliminary engineering cost. Tell us, is it correct, and what's the range? And they came up that the actual cost for our project will be $7.2 billion with a wide range. These are actual data, strong numbers, And what do our politicians do? Immediately say that this is an anti-rail rant and throw the report away. Unfortunately, time and again, in Hawaii, we have data-free decision making. And that's terrible. It comes back 20 years later and haunts you big time. Unfortunately, I believe that most of the politicians that they make the decisions right now, they are not going to be around 20 years from now to pay the price for it,
Or they might be in the U.S. Senate or in the U.S. House.
But they'll be collecting their pensions and their health care no matter. Let's go back to something basic, too. And that is, what was supposed to be the genesis of this whole project? Traffic congestion.
Yes.
Relieve traffic congestion. Right. And when we did look at figures and data here and elsewhere, we found, first of all, they were unrealistic. And then secondly, the city administration was forced to concede, well, no, it's really not going to relieve congestion, but it's going to create jobs, lots of local jobs. And then we found out, wait a minute, it's not going to create local jobs and it's not going to create long-term jobs. We're going to have to go to the mainland and get skilled workers. Where are we going to be buying our hardware? We're going to be buying it from foreign countries and all of that. That's why you have another lawsuit. It's not just our lawsuit. You have a lawsuit from the two losing bidders. A
complaint so far. I
wish
it was a lawsuit, but it's a complaint.
Don't you think it's going to morph into a lawsuit?
It is a $1 billion contract, so it's worth some lawyers.
But I stand corrected. You're right.
It's a complaint so far. Yeah.
But what is the complaint? That the process was not fair.
That's right.
And so it goes back to the same thing. So now we're looking at what is the real purpose. And in the legislature for the last 2 years, the only thing that we've been talking about is TODs, transit-oriented development, and their grand plan that everybody is going to want to live near or on top of the rail line, and they're going to
steel on steel.
Steel on steel. They're either going to walk down out of their apartment and then go up 90 feet, but they're going to live pleasantly, and they're going to live right there. So now it's being sold as TOD. Commercial investment, everything else, everything but transportation. And that's the scary part.
Yes, just a few days ago, it was in the news. Ho'opili, B.R. Horton has refiled with the Land Use Commission, which 2 years ago that they threw the application out because it would simply create too much congestion. Unfortunately,
to explain what Ho'opili is.
Explain what it is. It's basically where our prime agriculture is, loon farms where the kids go to collect pumpkins and all, and all the watermelon fields on Oahu. It's prime agricultural land in the Ewa fields, and all of that now, they are under lease. The owner is B.R. Horton, and they want to create 18,000 new residences. That was the old application.
So 18,000 new homes.
New homes. Now they cut down on the number of homes. I don't know the exact number.
12,000.
12,000.
Yeah.
But the issue is, even if the rail is spectacularly successful, at the very most, 10% of those folks will use the rail. 90% will use car modes. Guess what? It's 12,000 new homes, 90% of which will be using the car. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
There's still going to be a lot of traffic.
The H1, H2, it's such a huge bottleneck.
Right.
And they're doing that behind that bottleneck. So all these people are going to go and add themselves to that bottleneck. It makes no sense. It's not like we're anti-development, but you cannot the Ewa Plains without adding lanes. That is really
and where will the keiki go for their pumpkins, for goodness sakes, the poor little keiki? And us for our vegetables.
I know. It is really upsetting they don't understand the basic equation of serving people and providing transportation, because we're really downgrading our own economy. The Kolinas, the Aulanis, and all of them. There is no capacity for them, and the train cannot help their situation. We need to add lane capacity, and nobody's planning for it.
I think Panos is missing the real point, though. Now, what have we had, currently? The big issue is homelessness. Nobody's come up with a solution. If you build the train, put the homeless on the train, have them run back and forth all day long, they'll have full capacity and everything will be fine. So I think you're missing the point.
All right.
Okay, that's a whole other story, I guess.
Let them deny it. Let them deny it, right?
Yep. Okay. So I think we saw that in Portland. There were a lot of homeless people on the Portland Express sitting in there. Yeah.
And in fact, there are reports that it serves
it
serves the drug trade, back and forth delivering, drugs.
SBH Foundation, a year and a half ago, almost 2 years now, put out a report on the greenhouse impact of the rail. by Wendell Cox, Dr. Wendell Cox. And it showed that, in fact, because that's another one of the arguments, we're going to love the planet, we're going to get rid of those gas guzzlers and all that. And in fact, that's not true, is it?
No, it's not true for two dimensions. Number one, it does not improve congestion. Congestion in the future will be worse with rail than it is today, therefore more fumes from cars. Secondly, 96% of the power on Oahu is produced by burning oil or coal. So the green parameter is gone. And by the time we get our energy going into green, it's going to take another 20, 30 years, and then it's going to be only partial. So the green parameter is out the window.
The green parameter is out. Panos brings up another point about powering that rail.
Right.
And I can remember that we had hearings in the legislature, and we asked Hawaiian Electric if they have the capacity to do that. And they said, oh, yes, of course we can. This is the same Hawaiian Electric where we have more and more frequent rolling blackouts and all of that in the already constructed residential areas. So it is a serious question.
It is.
It's a serious concern. And again, I think we're getting shined on in terms of the answers. Right. And so maybe these are some of the other issues that will come out in the court case.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, we will need at least half a power plant, the equivalent, to move
just
the rail.
For that.
Just for the rail. There is no doubt about it. You have a train every 3 minutes. That's a lot of power.
But
stations,
escalators,
elevators, yes.
You got to give Cliff Slater all the credit in the world. I mean, I remember back in the late 80s and early 90s, the battle then against the Fosse rail, and he was the first one and the only one to show the drawings from the proponents of what this was going to look at. And he's doing it again now, and people go, they gasp to see these 90-foot high structures, see the view plane, the ocean view taken out. The proponents don't do that. In fact, they hide those drawings, and a lot of people here, I think, romanticize. When they think of the rail, they think of Disneyland and the monorail, or even at Pearl Ridge, and they say, oh, that's really cool. Or they think about the light rail where they have seen or been on in other places of the country. But heavy rail, you brought up earlier with Puerto Rico. Here you got an apples-to-apples comparison. Same company, same kind of thing and all that. We don't ever do that. We don't want to compare. No. You can do the same thing with hot rail, with hot lanes, and find out how positive it is and how good it is. We don't do that, or we haven't done that. So again, that's one of the parameters for the
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. Ask you about Council Member Nestor Garcia. He's the council chair now. He used to be the head of transportation. Then we find out that he's making $60,000 from the chamber, I guess it's the Kapolei Chamber?
Yes.
And Chamber of Commerce.
Which was set up by the rail supporters.
Which was set up by the rail supporters and got him $60,000, which he's already making $60 with the council. And then I think
worth every penny of it.
And I think he has another $60. But people were saying, well, look, is this a conflict of interest that he didn't declare where he's the transportation chair and he's getting money from the, $60,000 as much as his council salary, or actually a little more. Is that a conflict for him? Should he have withdrawn from the voting? Or should he have withdrawn as a chair of transportation?
He should.
Well, I think at the very least he should have disclosed. That's the first thing. As you know from covering the legislature, the issue comes up all the time. Blah, 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 am I in conflict? And nobody's ever in conflict in public office. But a reasonable woman or a rational person would say, that's just not right. The question came up about Senator Will Sparrow in the state Senate, who took a job with D.R. Horton and is one of the most vocal proponents of the elevated rail. And of course, D.R. Horton is as well. They always testify in favor of it. So you can ask these questions. I think that the first stepping point is transparency and declaration, and I think that should have been done, and it wasn't done.
Yeah, I mean, there is a huge difference between, let's say, a $1,000 or even a $4,000 campaign contribution and quite another, a $60,000 job. That's personal. It's almost a direct payback. I mean, if you go into a campaign, you can never use those monies for any personal gain. It's for the expenses of the campaign. So it's completely different. I mean, fine, Mayor Carlisle may receive money and it's natural, from the rail lobby, etc. But that's campaign money. Personal money to mostly work-at-home job, part-time for $60,000, it's really an eye-popper.
Now, I had Charles Dejoux on the show recently, and he was talking about $1.5 billion is supposed to come from the federal government, but is it really going to come for the rail? What do you think about that? Do you think Senator Inouye is going to be able to get us our $1.5 billion for this rail system?
I don't. We've heard about that. At first it was, what, 1 billion, and then it was
Right.
up to 1.5.
Oh, it started from $450,000,
That's right.
but then it's a long history. The current figure is 1.55.
Look, the Congress, and particularly the House, is very adverse to these kinds of projects. And the older projects, the BART and New York and Chicago and all that, they've got so much money in repairs that they need to do. Now, what do you think the government is going to spend money on? The existing systems where they have tremendous populations, or somewhere out here in the Pacific? I would bet on the municipal areas already.
Yeah, and the numbers really don't jive, because for fiscal year 2011, the entire bucket for new starts for rail and bus systems in the nation is 1.6 billion. Our requirement for 6 years is 1.6 billion. Oh, come on, since when did the Honolulu project become, the overarching priority for the entire nation? Not only we have maintenance needs, but also a lot of expansion systems in New York, because they need to connect their airports. Their systems were never finished. So new starts like ours are at the very bottom of the prioritization. And the numbers have been massaged just to get what is called the medium rating. Medium rating means that you can barely get approval. None of our ratings are high. Our system is not good by FTA criteria.
Well, we're almost out of time, but tell me what this project means for the taxpayers.
Higher costs, the inability to have any control. You probably are going to have Councilwoman Ann Kobayashi on in the near future, and you have the battle going on now between the mayor and the city council just to control the expenses, and he doesn't want the expenses controlled or any oversight by the council, which it should be. So going to be a lot of negatives. I don't see any positives.
Real quick, what does this mean for infrastructure on Oahu, getting repaired or not getting repaired, this project?
Not getting repaired, because it's the same bucket of money. We need 40 billion to fix it. We take 10 for rail, much less left to fix the sewers, water lines, and the pavements.
Okay, what does it mean for small business, real quick?
Well, again, many of them are threatened with removal, eminent domain right now. They're threatened with higher property taxes. They're threatened with higher GET or other surcharges and all of that. So again, it's going to be very difficult and no positives. Okay,
tell people if they want to get involved with your lawsuit.
Right.
They can contact the SBH Foundation. Our phone number is 808-396-1724, or go to www.sbhfoundation.org.
Okay, and also HonoluluTraffic.com.
HonoluluTraffic.com as well.
Right,
Cliff
okay.
Slater, right.
And we'll see what happens with the lawsuit. We'll have to have you on again to talk about that.
We'll give you an update.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Malia.
You're welcome.
This has been News Behind the News. Thank you for joining me today. Aloha.